What is going on, y'all? It's your boy, DameSmiff, and I'm out here to talk to you guys again about the music industry from my perspective. So, continuing, well, really finalizing this week's theme about your network, reading the room and understanding the differences between the people that you have in your network and how to communicate with them. We explored all of the different things from who to put in your network, how to read the room when you're with your network, how to navigate gender dynamics within your network, and then how to navigate cultural dynamics within your network. So now we're going to look at, let's say you picked the people you want, right? Today's topic is about how to utilize that network, right? What does it really look like at a high level, right? And so I would love to use myself as an example, but I haven't recorded everything that I was doing with people. So some of the clips we're going to be going over today are actually going to be from the elite in terms of the industry standard, and they're going to show us exactly how they kind of set up, let's say, their studios, how their teams may work together, and just give us a little bit more of that insight, right? So what I'll be doing is I'll be guiding you through that from the perspective of a musician, right? Many of you get this from the perspective of people who are, I guess you could say, super fans, worked within the music industry and stuff like that. That's all really cool. But this perspective is going to be of one that is actually trying to continue on with the career as such, right? So a lot of people who will be watching this, you may be a musician. Maybe you're playing an instrument, or maybe you record music and you're trying to develop your own catalog. This will be a good insight for you to learn from, because now you can apply some of the things we went over in the previous streams with what we're about to see. And then also, you may be viewing this as a fan. This will also give you insight on how you can actually support artists you really, really like. And you can also gain insight if you want to bridge that gap from being a fan to an investor. And so, if you like conversations like this, make sure you hit the like button, because that'll show more people that this video is really cool, and then we need to support it. Also hit the subscribe button, because that way you can also keep up with the latest streams and episodes that I make. So as we get started today, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of my personal perspective on like how to utilize your network, right? So when it comes to musicianship, we have to bridge the gap between culture, trends, like culture and pop culture trends, I guess you can say, and a lot of what we personally see amongst those trends. And when we do that, it's going to kind of dictate how we move and utilize our network, right? So some people will be of immense value in one area of expertise that may not be as valuable in another area of expertise. So that means their authority may shift. Maybe their responsibilities may shift. Maybe I guess you can say, consistency of how often you guys speak will shift, right? And that doesn't mean that they, are necessarily worse at what they're good at, but it just means they're not as valuable to you for what you're doing at the time, right? This is going to be something that many artists are going to struggle with, because the key thing that you're going to manage is the relationship with people in your network, right? So let's say, using yourself for example, if you're playing in a band for a very long time and you guys are making good amount of money, you got the royalties split, the contract looking good, and you guys have all the equal writing shares and splits that you love, and it's going great. But then suddenly the audience doesn't like your genre of music as much as this new genre that they've been introduced to. That means that the value that you guys have to each other is going to shift if you can't figure out at least how to get on the same page with this new trend, or you guys will have to learn how to be skillful in other areas, right? So you'll see this a lot with groups, bands, and things like that. But you can also see this directly within an artist's network, right? Maybe a manager is not as educated on AI music and streaming from that perspective. So they get phased out in like the early 2010s. Maybe a producer is not really up on the latest sound kits and skill sets that are needed. So maybe they get phased out of that section or area of producer real estate, right? Maybe a studio doesn't have the latest up to date state of the art equipment. And so they get phased out of selection. Sometimes venues get phased out. So when we're thinking about how we're building this network, we also got to think about how to use it in real time, how to really navigate the value it brings, navigate the value we want from it, but also navigate the value we can bring it. Because all in all, like we keep consistently repeating here, when you're building your network, a lot of what you get from it is going to be based on the amount of value you bring to it. Okay. So if you have like really, really rich friends, then that means they generally don't need your money, but they do like people who help them make money, if that makes sense, you know? So that's kind of how we're going to look at a lot of the clips we're going to see today. And we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into what the highest, or I guess you can say state of the art musicians, producers, and engineers and executives are really doing. So let's get into the first clip today.
I'm Josh Collins. Welcome to Atlantic Studios West. What is this place and what do you guys do here?
This is Atlantic Studios West. We are a recording studio for Atlantic Records.
Okay, so a lot of cool B-roll, a lot of cool shots and things like that, right? That was actually an interesting point that they showed us where they said there was no mic, so you can hear the difference, right? So you musicians and you audiophiles, pick that up, right? Think about that. If you want to start getting into content, you want to start talking to your audience and things like that, this is what it sounds like to not have a mic. And they're pointing it out, you know, kind of joking at themselves just to be like, hey, you know, we don't have one right now. But it is something to learn from right there in that moment, right? One thing too, I want you guys to look at here. We looked at, I think a while ago, we looked at Tech Nine's big old campus, huge studio, strange land and stuff like that, right? Well, look at the, I guess you can say, reception desk of this studio here. And do you see how like pristine it looks? There's a certain standard it has, right? Now we can look at like the design of it and be like, ooh, the desk is curved and there's like blue and the wooden floor. Look how the chairs are cute, right? We can do that, but I want you to also consider what it takes to get that. Let's say you wanted to do this and you wanted to have something like this. Well, it would take a lot of strategic thinking and investment for this to work, right? On top of that, you would need some kind of way to maintain it financially, but also physically. Like people are clearly taking care of this. It could have been, let's say on a worse day, there's like a bunch of papers on the desk, but they knew the cameras were coming, so they cleaned it up a little bit. I don't know. But let's say it generally looks like this, right? That means you have to have a certain standard of character as well, right? So a lot of people are okay with like a mess here and there, some stuff around, laying around and stuff like that. But it takes like practice to kind of keep this going. And what I'm trying to show you is that when you get to this point, you don't want to then start practicing, right? Just like when you get to the gig, you don't want to then start working out the notes. So as we look at this stuff, take really, really good look at the detail of what you're seeing here, because this video is going to be a quick snapshot for YouTube's sake. But we're going to try and break down as much as we can from learning how their network is utilized in order to make this work. So what kind of person do you think would you hire to work your reception desk here? If you were a person that ran Atlantic Studios and you had like, I don't know, a cajillion and 4 artists and they all made good money, how would you look at who you hire for your receptionist?
Our purpose is to record the artists and writers for the label. The label books time here to record and write songs for the artists, and then the A&Rs use those songs to shop to the artists, and then hopefully the artists come here, record them, and then put them out.
This is Studio 2. Yeah, so this is more of the production room. This is the smallest of the studios. Got Graces in all the rooms, Tube Tech, CL1B, or I guess a Tube Tech, CL1B, and BAEs. There's the 1081s here.
So he's rattling off all the equipment he sees, right? But again, do you see how neat and particular this desk setup looks, right? This is another part of your network, right? If you were an artist, how many of you think you can master this room, right? And you probably very much could master this room. But would you need to, if you could hire somebody that could do this, pay them good money for their work and then give you good service, right? So then now think about what kind of person you would hire to work this department of your record label.
Straight out of the console, which Papa CD
Or your studio, rather.
put in. Those are Eves. I like them more, honestly, than the Focals. We were talking about that earlier.
They have the Mac Mini there, which is slowed down production. So you remember what we talked about, I think about a month ago, when it comes to chip sales and things like that. That means your studio right now may be at risk of not having access to this kind of technology due to something like the chip situation that's happening in Taiwan. Everything matters. Like, we could sit here and act like none of that matters to musicians, but this studio is showing you right there that that's a Mac Mini. And this was filmed in March last year.
Just yeah. The Focals, I feel like you're saying it's like really about the positioning of them and stuff. I feel like after hearing the Eves, like the Focals for whatever reason sound like muddy to me. Like they're like tiny, but they slap. They hit pretty hard. There's a booth right here. It's got a nice pink light, I think. Could be a different color. Who knows?
So here's the vocal booth. This is actually a pretty nice booth. So there's a few things we could think about here. Some people, when they're thinking about a vocal booth, they're like, yeah, almost anything can be used, right? And that is true to a sense, right? But now, if you were building this building or designing this building, do you know who you'd hire to design a vocal booth? Like, are there companies in mind that you think of? Do you have their phone numbers? Are you on their email list? Do they have a relationship with you? Do they have a relationship with artists you recognize or studios you've recognized and things like that? And then another question that you have to ask yourself is, does this even matter to you? And so when you consider all of these questions, right, now you should, at this point, after considering those questions, look at artists a little bit different. So when you see a guitar player and they're, I don't know, however old they are, and they're however far they are in their career, and there's a particular level that you expect as far as success, do you see how far it takes to get there, right? So for many of us, we'll be like, oh yeah, you could just go to the studio. Like you said, you just come to the studio and, you know, sign and get stuff like that. But as we keep seeing over and over and over again, that there's a lot of leverage you have in ownership, right? So owning these mics, owning these walls, owning this equipment, having access to this is all key to your success. But what then happens is that in order to get to what we call success, which is really notoriety, we will actually lease out all of the authority and leverage we actually have. So we'll say, we'll just go to one of the greatest studios or whatever and just, you know, have this transactional relationship. And then we'll go to the greatest venues and have this transactional relationship, and then have these same transactional relationships with our fans and expect to have some kind of huge return in equity and investment and things like that, right? So this is why the network is going to be important, because in reality, you probably cannot do this in like a timely fashion. Like, you can't just build in Atlantic studios without some kind of huge advantage or supplement to what you're doing, right? And so because of that reality, we have to now build relationships with one another, or just work at our own level in our own pace. So some of you may be musicians with home studios, some of you may be musicians with like pieces here and there, and then you can kind of work within these kinds of networks. But the point is that looking at what's here, what's provided, what you get access to, this is extremely valuable. But you also have to think about what it means for you as an individual when it comes to what you desire from the music industry.
Sort of like a tier to which room you're in and who you're working with and the purpose or anything like that?
Writers who come here regularly or artists who come here regularly can develop a preference, and we'll do our best to get them in the room that they prefer. We, on purpose, have every room have a different vibe and a different look about it so that people can choose which one they're feeling that day.
Wow, this is cool. This is a fancy desk. Is this a standing desk?
Oh, dude, yeah.
Ah, yeah. All right.
So you get a little lean going, just some like lean at the little push-up vibes, you know?
And then you got Apollo.
That's kind of crazy. But this is kind of an interesting thing. We talked about how reading the room matters, and we also talked about how communication between body languages work and things like that last week. Well, when you're considering how they're designing these rooms, he did mention how each one has a bit of a different vibe, and how there's kind of a preference for artists that come through. So now you have to think about this. When you're hiring your staff or your studio, are they capable of doing that? Like when you're not there, can they have the hospitality skills to read how an artist is feeling and navigate that in order to please the artist, right? Or are you looking for a studio like that? Like how would you navigate choosing a studio that could understand that, right? You may be in one of the best studios on the planet, but they don't have the best hospitality.
Fancy desk. Is this a standing desk?
Oh, dude, yeah.
Ah, yeah. All right.
So you get a little lean going, just some like lean at the little push-up vibes, you know?
And then you got Apollos in here. This is
Apollo 16s.
You got a really nice selection of outboard stuff in these.
Yeah.
For like production writing rooms, dude. All right, and you got some extra curricular compressors over there. LA2A.
Little sidecar.
1176. Shout out to the Audioscape.
Yeah.
Oh, bro, we gotta turn it on though.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, that little red light. I did a mix in here, and I put everything through the Neves and like ducked it, and then cranked it. It was like a hip hop mix. It's just like real grimy. Literally just put it through all of the gear. It's all it's all about the circuitry.
All right, let's go on to 3.
So down this long hall.
Oh,
yeah.
this is.
So look at this here. We talked about this when we were explaining how the Netflix group, I think I just hinted at it, the Netflix staff actually has like a break room for everybody and provides vitamins and really good food for their energy levels and stuff like that. This room here has to be maintained just as well. Look, it's all swept, nice floors, chairs are in the right spot, tables are in order. I've had cleaning jobs, so I completely understand the hospitality that comes with cleaning and how meticulous you have to be, because the point here that I'm highlighting is that this is a particular environment that they're designing for musicians, artists, writers, and people like that, maybe that have meetings and stuff too, right? So this is beyond anything you're probably going to see on a piece of sheet music. No notes are played or anything like that. But are you capable of grasping all of this as a leader when it comes to designing a studio? Or are you capable of understanding the expectations and standards that are there at a music studio? Okay. Because some studios are just a lot smaller in general and things like that. But what's consistent here is the expectation and understanding of standards.
Nice, dude.
Yeah, nice and spacious.
Yeah.
Got these nice little.
They got a dishwasher, microwave, sink. So that comes with plumbing, and then probably utensils and all kinds of stuff in that little cabinet there. This is all going to come into how you maintain your music career and your music business.
Tables for date night, and you can have your nice little pasta and you can eat it with your friend. 3's over here, sorry. Here is 3. It's a lot of the same gear as the other rooms. We have the 500 with the channelers and the Neves and the APIs and stuff. Oh, dude, these guitars, okay. These guitars are the best guitars.
Talking about Prestige.
Not this one. I mean, this is fine, but the Prestige guitars are so awesome. Literally, favorite guitars on the earth. Seriously though, this is electric. Is like $1,000 and it plays like a $5,000. Dude, it's like a boutique guitar. Something just broke over there, but that's great. It's really great. You can't hear it because it's not plugged in. Seriously, fire guitar.
You got some similar Apollo 16. You got a couple distressors in here, and then this TG. What is this guy?
Chandler.
The microphone cassette. This is like basically a channel strip, right?
Yeah, EQ, pre-EQ compressor.
Here's the booth. Here's a cool booth. This one's nice and comfy, cozy too. You can I feel like you can hear the difference when you walk in here.
Oh yeah.
Got the C800 in here. This little chair that you can sit upon and ponder your thoughts. And think about all the
while you wait on the edit.
Things while you wait on the edit. There's a little lounge. Got a little artist lounge in here with this organ, so you can hang out in here.
Like, this is insane. Like, as you watch this is actually something that most people kind of expect with their artistry, right? And my point is that even if you expect it, when you get in here, how do you treat it when you're in here? And this is a part of your network, right? This is just a studio. This is where you would go to create and work with other artists and develop ideas. This is just where you create. And do you see the level and how expensive and the high standards it takes to do this, right? And so a lot of times when I explain this to people, they're like, yeah, I mean, I just do it how I do it at home. And it's like, you could do it how you do it at home. But if you have to like get dressed, like I'm wearing sunglasses for this stream, right? Like if you had to get dressed for your job, then you would get dressed for your job, right? If you knew you had to be fit to be, to look good on camera and things like that, you would be working on that. But a lot of times we try to wait until we get there and then we practice. Plenty of times I've been in studios that weren't as nice as this with people who were really, really good at what they do, but they didn't understand the studio. So they didn't understand the technology. They didn't understand the process, punching in and all that stuff. The basic approach to recording music wasn't there because they were more of a live performer, right? And so bridging that gap is what we're trying to do here, because this is going to be a huge, massive, almost poignant part of your network. And when you're developing your network, this is how you properly use it, at least at this level. Again, you guys could do what the Migos did when they first started out and just have the studio in the basement with your homies. But there are levels to what we're looking at here.
Under your thoughts, think about all the
While you wait on the edit.
things. While you wait on the edit, there's a little lounge. Got a little artist lounge in here with this organ, so you can
So you got
hang
a
out in
Hammond
here.
B3 in the lounge, bro.
That's right.
That's cool.
Yeah, man.
Again, very distinct vibe in here.
Play some Minecraft.
It's cool to see this version of a studio setup, because this is very much focused on like the songwriting and production side of things, which is more and more prevalent.
You want to be comfortable. Like it's like I feel like there's like if you go to like a big studio and it's almost sometimes can be overwhelming.
This is reminiscent in VIP.
Yeah, definitely.
A little bit.
This is the big room.
The big room.
Oh yeah, dude, this is nice.
Osberger Duo 12s. Got the Focal.
This is by far the most comfortable room. Walking in, it's just like immediately welcoming, and I feel like I want to stay in this room. Do you guys prefer this room over the others?
We purposely just redesigned this room to explicitly create that feeling, because it had originally been designed in a way when you walked in, you actually kind of just hit the back of the speaker as soon as you walked in.
Yeah.
We redesigned it so that as soon as you walked in, it was just immediately opening up.
I mean,
And that's an actual intentional thing that he's doing. Notice how the speakers are large. There's like a grand piano in the corner. Like, again, y'all, there's levels to this. Now, okay, another thing too. Thinking about your network, who would you invite to the studio with you? If you were an artist here and you had a whole bunch of like ideas and things you wanted to get across, and you planned on spending hours in here, paying for, studio time here, who would you bring to, be in your entourage? Would your girlfriend be in here, or would she just be scrolling on her phone, just chilling? Would your homeboy be in here, or would he just be sitting there just doing nothing all day? Right. And so this is kind of what I mean about like, it's going to start to ruffle some feathers as far as how artists look at this, because you got to think about your network now. A lot of artists really try to relate to being regular people. Like they want to bring their mom to the studio, or say my cousin's in on making beats and stuff like that. But there's a certain etiquette and there's a certain standard that comes with the music industry that kind of transcends a lot of what these gentlemen are showing here, because they themselves are just, dudes in t-shirts just hanging out and playing, but they also have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge. If you pay really close to what they're saying, they're very, very educated on what they're talking about. So let's not sleep on what we're looking at here by basically trying to consider what they're doing as easy or simple, right? Just designing a room for vibes and stuff like that is one thing. But when you really consider who has to pull that off, who has to maintain it, that's a completely different thing.
it feels like a living room in the center, and then you're like,
Big boys.
yeah, it's kind of like the entertainment center.
This used to be producer Andrew Cedars, like his room. Before that, it was a dance studio. I was actually sending this CD earlier, but like I did drums in here for my band's or my friend's country band. And I took and ran like an 87 out into the hallway and put it on the table, and I had like this like it's just, dude, so great.
Room mic in another room is like
Analog pre-delay.
Chef's kiss. Yeah, analog pre-delay.
So you got a nice collection of synths and keys over here going to that Neve. Is that OPX? What is that?
Yeah,
That
OPX.
is the OPX.
We're running it
That's
through.
run Dante to the computer.
Yep.
Wow, that is clean.
Which is pretty great, man. I mean, CD did some drum sessions a little bit ago, and he literally just did just the OPX, and it sounded awesome. I always just want to run everything through like every piece of gear whenever I do it. Like whenever I work in this room, I use every XLR cable in the studio.
What is this? What is this, a C7?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not
That's
a piano.
actually one of the great mysteries of the studio is we don't exactly know where this came from. This piano is really dope though because it has
MIDI.
It's MIDI brain and motors in it to be a player piano. So like you could essentially like record, like write a MIDI part, send it to this piano, and then record it being played perfectly.
Yeah.
Wow. So they bridged the gap between tech and music yet again. Tech companies got one, another one alongside of musicians. So again, something that you're probably not thinking about as like a rapper, or you're probably not thinking about as a girl who's writing a song right now about how her boyfriend broke up with her in high school. Like you're probably not considering that. But these things are happening around you, and they're tools and resources that we have. But you won't really consider that if your network isn't applied the proper way.
We'll quickly go through these guys.
So we got this Mellotron, which is great. Did you know when they made this first, was it you that's telling me this? That when this first came out, they had actual, like, it was like reel-to-reel tape for each key that would actually spin for whatever instrument you were playing. So it doesn't do that anymore, I guess. Still sounds awesome though for being like, I guess it's like solid state or whatever.
It's like a recreation.
Yeah. But it sounds awesome. We got this Korg, micro Korg, vocoder.
That thing is sweet.
Yeah.
Especially when you find someone that like really knows everything about it.
You ever use like an actual, like we had like a rack vocoder.
Oof, yeah.
That was, but it was like super noisy. That's a problem with like old gears if you don't like, or you know, like classic stuff is if you don't keep it up to date, it gets noisy. We got this Rhodes suitcase. We got this cool little Nord Stage 3. We got this Prophet 6, Juno 106, and a DX7.
Yeah, those three alone are
this is my
fantastic.
fave of the three, I feel like. But Juno's great too, but this is just so like...
Probably a little more flexible on the Prophet than the Juno.
Yeah, the Juno I feel like is cool, but it's, I don't know, it doesn't have as much weight. I think I like it more because Thomas Erickson is I love Thomas.
So do you see why a lot of times too, when studios are looking for artists to work with, why they prefer artists that are like highly productive? Because look how much accents you have. Like there's really no reason to not be able to create music. So that's why in this show, a lot of times we don't talk about directly the music part of like the theory and what notes are and who's what, right? Because the music business kind of is above that. Right? We all generally know how to create songs, right? We know how to use that keyboard, and these sounds aren't really going to be so much different from the other sounds. It's really the driver, right? So this is why it's a super valuable to studios when they see that, oh, you can walk in here and just start cranking out music. Well, okay, let's start running up contracts and let's start thinking about plans, campaigns, marketing campaigns and stuff like that. Like it's a whole different language. That's why I'm trying to say that if you are an artist that wants to focus on just dumping out a bunch of music, that's kind of why pretty much all the other artists before you fell into the similar traps, is because they weren't at least aware of or educated to read the room and say, okay, who's in here with me? How is this beneficial? What does this look like? What do I expect to get from this, right? Instead, they're really passionate about just getting in and playing the music, right? Some of you are watching him talk about these keyboards and you're like, man, the things I could do with the keyboard. But it's like, the things you do with the keyboard are not really as important as what you do with the thing you did with the keyboard, right? So let's just keep this in mind as we continue to talk about this.
Thomas Erickson.
Does the studio have like an Instagram or something?
At Atlantic Studios with an S. West.
That's right.
With a T.
Shout out to you guys and this place. This is really cool. I came to a previous version of this upstairs.
Yeah, on the third
like
floor.
a decade ago, I think.
Yep.
And I have not seen it since. I've seen some photos of you in here. Links in the description. Go follow Josh, Ryan, the studio. All that stuff's down in the description.
Yep. Get signed. Come hang out.
Yeah,
that's right.
Get signed to Atlantic and then come
we'll
make
see
some
ya.
music.
And we'll see you there. Oh, I hated that.
But yeah, that's pretty much how it works for those who are signed to Atlantic Studios. They get to work with that. Now, again, when you're thinking about, like I said, who you bring to the studio, how it really works, who is actually going to be of benefit to you in the studio, who are those people, what characteristics and standards do you have for them, and then what results should they be delivering, right? we could think about all the musicians we know, all the friends and homies we like and things like that, but a lot of them are lazy. A lot of them don't have the same opinion or agenda as you, so you will misalign there. But then at the same time, you also want to be collaborative, right? You want to find a way to be able to read the room and kind of navigate different things and be outside of your comfort zone and still be able to thrive, right? But most people, when they are in these situations, they're going to rely on their training. That's why we're trying to expose you to this before you get there, or at least validate that of which you can confirm to be a good idea and good instinct, right? So let's move on to the next clip where we will now explore kind of how they used to do things back in the day.
Hair all up on my arms and stuff. What's going on? This man is in the house.
Hey, give me some coffee, man.
So here we have Method Man from Wu-Tang, and this is in 1994. And so he's in the studio right now, and I think he's going to give us a quick little tour of the studio. But I want you to take a look at like what the environment looks like, who's in there, how they're being successful, how they're being productive. And then I want you to think about how his character is going to transcend all of those things and carry him through to success.
Yeah, behind the desk. How y'all doing?
He's playing executives today.
This is role switching type of thing up at
We do this sometimes. I play artists, he plays executives. BET.
Trey Wap is the A&R person. Thank you very much.
Another woman doing things. Let them know. Let them know who's running this world.
So that's funny. So he actually has people employed, I assume, and they're running different roles for him within the record label. And he even said, and he hinted at it a little bit, that he has to wear different hats and do different roles, right? Of course, he could be on stage rapping, right? We all rap, right? But the thing is that he had to kind of take position as far as an authority figure for his business. So he started to actually look at it probably in a more organized fashion, and he started to work with people like the young lady there, and what they started to develop is a relationship as far as a network, right? Their business relationship.
Yeah, behind the desk. How y'all doing?
He's playing executives today.
This is role switching type of thing up at
We do this sometimes. I play artists, he plays
Trey
executives.
Wap.
BET.
Trey Wap is the A&R person. Thank you very much.
Another woman doing things. Let them know. Let them know who's running this world. See everybody. And they don't know. Now, is this your artist? Did you bring him in here?
What made him just be like the man that you had to have?
What made him be the man? Well, I heard him on Protect Your Neck. You know, he's a member of the Wu-Tang Clan. I heard him on Protect Your Neck, which is their first single. And, you know, he had a real dope vocal performance on there and just stood out a lot. And when I met them, when I saw him in person, I said, yo, Money looks like a star. He looks like a star. He looks like he's going to be a star. Yeah, get that.
So yeah, that's the cool thing about being, you know, talented before you get there. So now her, as essentially an executive, saw the value in him. And that's why I said, do you see why they're so ready to look for people who have potential and things like that? Because she used her instincts in that moment, because she could have just looked at him performing really well and just been like, yeah, he's a good rapper, I don't know what else, right? She could have used anything else to look against him, his aesthetics, the vulgarity, the style of music, whatever it is. There were a lot of people doing her job in different genres, but we're still in the music industry, but they all didn't land on Method Man of Wu-Tang, right? And so for her to be able to notice that is a skill. And so she used her probably woman's perspective to be able to see this within his performance. And so him being able to see that within her, as in terms of her bringing probably a lot of value to his music career, he was able to utilize her relationship in terms of the business network. Now, I'm saying that and you guys are like, oh, that's super simple and super easy, but you got to also think about the times that was going on there. There were no like social media pages, no Instagrams and stuff like that. There were no super online press kits and stuff like that. They probably still had phone books and stuff like that. So for her to commit to this artist means that he had to prove a lot of value that a lot of us today aren't really willing to do, as far as like driving the shows and making sure we're getting in front of people as far as their time and their other responsibilities and appointments that they have available to them. So this is a huge point that she's making that could easily be glossed over with today's conveniences.
Are you trying to act shy now? That was, he ain't shy, because on stage, he ain't shy.
True indeed. So we signed him here at Def Jam, and Prince Rakeem, who's pretty much, I call him the overseer, because you know, he oversaw the whole Wu-Tang project, and
Michael Kaiser, Leo's on the
boom,
post.
jumping off. He just has
No calls.
he just basically has a hand over the whole thing, and so we got together and we talked about, I went out to Shaolin, to Staten Island, and to where they make all their music, and you know, we just sit down and kicked it or whatever, and you know, Meth was with it, I was always with it.
She came through and we gave it to her raw, man. Tracy shot there. We played like 12 joints for her. I think about 12 joints.
Seemed like it was 40.
Yeah, yo, it was going on in there. We had her air for like, we took her air captive for like 2 hours, you know what I'm saying?
True.
Took like 2 hours out of the day. She got a little old.
So compared to the studio you saw that would release the video last year, you see how much of a difference it is. This is Def Jam. Now, I'm sure Def Jam looks completely different now compared to 1994, but he's explaining also the process it took for him probably to, you know, prove himself to the label as far as getting signed. But basically he's saying for about 2 hours they met. I don't know if they had to pay for the meeting or whatever, maybe not, you know, they probably just were making the relationship work, right? And for 2 hours they played about 12 songs, and she was like, it felt like 40. Well, if you consider the time, songs back then were probably running about 2.5 to 3 minutes, not 2.5 to a minute now, like nowadays. So 3 minutes, which is probably a chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, possibly a bridge on like 3 of those 12 songs, probably 4 or 5 of those songs, right? Multiple artists. So you could see some like 3 verse songs with maybe a group verse where they're trading bars and battling like that. I don't know. But the point is that he played the music for them, and they could have relied on her respect for the music, but really there was a lot of business intention there. Like, they walked step by step through each process. They were there hopefully on time for all of the interactions. They were respectful and things like that, and they made sure business was up front as far as their expectations from Def Jam, and also Def Jam ideally would be upfront about their expectations from them, right? And so what this does is it trains you as an artist to use your network properly. Because let's remove networks, let's remove Def Jam from the network. Let's remove this woman from the network. If it was a fat old Asian man who's trying to bring you an investment, you have to think about it in the same way, right? And because you have to think about it in the same way, it teaches you how to be valuable in a network independently, right? And that was my point about him being so skillful at Protect Your Neck on Wu-Tang. He had to do that by himself, independent of Def Jam, before Def Jam came into the play, right? And so once that relationship now starts, then we can start using our business acumen and our creativity collaboratively. Otherwise, you'll just be, you know, doing shows and doing gigs all the time with no licenses, no, you know, sponsorships and stuff like that. And that's where Def Jam will help you do that. But you got to be on the same page. And the best way to do that is to develop a relationship with the people within your network, right? So the woman here, she's explaining how she's an A&R for Def Jam, spotted him and brought him to Def Jam. She also has to have her network and be valuable independently to Def Jam in order for them to prove to Method Man that she's valuable to him for his music career. It goes both ways. Now, you have to, again, train yourself both ways. So that means you have to start out your career at least setting a standard and learning to rise from it, or at least learning these standards from others. So that's why we looked at Atlantic first, to kind of see what we're used to seeing, to kind of take an advantage of how we can look at the past and what we're looking at now and say, man, we really do have it, you know, easier. We should really be taking advantage of this.
The next thing you know, everything was history. I'm looking for the platinum, man. real, yo. Alright. Yeah.
He gonna get it too.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about Method Man? Who are you?
Well, basically, right? I'm that brother that you don't know if he gonna stab you in your back or kiss you, man. You know? It's like, I don't know, I act off other people's emotions, right? Because I got like 36 different ones myself, you know? That's why I'm a method, man. Method, when you hear the word method, usually it's like a bunch of things. A method, like certain methods to different things. It depends on what you're talking about or what you're applying it to. Like my method of rhyming is, I don't know, I just say everything that everybody like to hear, you know what I'm saying? I take it back. I mean, way, way back to days when you waking up early in the morning, Saturday morning cartoons, right? All that. I'll leave it at that. People recognize, they hear stuff like that, and when you say stuff people is familiar with, it becomes fun for them to say. You know? I want the platinum, man. Alright? Let's put it, I want the platinum. Go buy my joint when it drop, man. Def Jam, they gonna treat a brother right. Alright? Russell Simmons.
Now, you know everybody's used to seeing you with your posse, with the Wu-Tang and all of that. Now, are you still down with that, or is everybody going their separate ways?
Family is still together. For all y'all out there that think that I'm breaking off on some solo stuff, yeah, it's solo as far as the album wise, but it's established that Wu-Tang, no matter what, each time a Wu-Tang album comes out, I'm appearing at least once on there, but I intend to appear at least 5 times on that joint, because I love, you know, that sound that we got, it can't be imitated, duplicated, none of that, because it's chemistry from way back in like 86, pardon me. Chemistry from way back in the days of 86, so we've been doing this together for the longest. It's like, when you're around somebody you know, sometimes they can finish off your sentences for you because they know you that well. That's how it is with us. It's a family thing. That's what the clan represents, the family. And Wu-Tang is the war.
So a lot of times when we are considering how we want to market ourselves as artists, right? Even like how Method Man was explaining himself and the group and his expectations for future decisions as far as, you know, his solo career and stuff like that. There's a certain approach that you just wouldn't do today that he was doing then. And back then it felt more natural, like he was just kind of speaking for himself, right? But today there's a real curated way. You can almost have like a cookie cutter answer, this kind of like vague kind of response that we get from artists today. And so it's very, very different now. Now, even if you look at Method Man today, it's a completely different Method Man, but it can be a sign of growth. It can be a sign of strategy. Like he said, he described himself as more of an ambiguous figure. And I remember a video of him saying he would like do funny stuff, like smear boogers on people's stuff because he just wants to be ahead of them if they do him dirty later. It's funny. Like, it's a weird little thing about him. But the point is that being able to be human and interactive and stuff like that plays a role in how you will be utilizing your network toward your fans. Now, that's one way. Like, some people could listen to how he explained himself and the Wu-Tang situation and be like, all right, I'll check out your music, right? But on the other hand, you got to think about how this sounds towards people that are interested in, let's say, catalogs today. So that's why the conversation shifts a little bit when you fast forward to 2026 and 2027, where artists are now talking a lot differently, is because they're speaking to not only fans, but investors and possibly other executives and things like that as well. So let's get into our last clip of the day, and I will get you guys off to lunch. But let's get into another one that's going to kind of deep dive a similar aspect of how to apply your network within the studio.
The world-famous Capitol Studios has hosted artists from the Beach Boys to Frank Sinatra to Arcade Fire. With Studios A, B and C, mastering rooms, production suites and even Dolby Atmos, Capitol Studios is fully equipped and was refurbished in 2012 when Universal Music took over. Sound on Sound visited the iconic Hollywood building to find out more.
So I believe Capitol Records is where you've seen a lot of the big national hits that come across here. When I see that building, honestly, all I think about is Dr. Dre. But yeah, this is going to be a very, very good insight for you young musicians, because we get to see the transitions between old, new, old.
My name is Paula Salvatore, and I'm the Vice President of the studios, basically managing the studios, booking the time, you know, being involved with everything that goes on here. I've been here since 1990. I came.
So when we consider something like this, I'm gonna rewind it so we can hear her story a little bit more. But when we consider who we're adding to our network, how many of you would have passed her on the street as just like some just normal woman in America? Who would have thought she would have been the studio manager of Capitol Studios? You know what I'm saying? Like, when we're considering this, it's more so to show you that people's skill sets and people's understanding of this industry is going to go way deeper than how you see them on stage. Like, all the people who are really good at music and they got like all the songs coming out and stuff like that, that's one thing. All the people that's on stage and they look cool on stage and they can dance and they can sing and stuff like that, that's one thing. But she is a power player as far as the music industry. She is extremely valuable and important as far as her perspective and as her authority. So for her to have been in the business for so long proves something, all right?
Sound visited the iconic Hollywood building to find out more.
My name is Paula Salvatore, and I'm the Vice President of the studios, basically managing the studios, booking the time, you know, being involved with everything that goes on here.
Does that sound familiar to like what you would typically see most women doing in the music industry? Booking the time, organizing, maintaining, structuring, delegating, you know, making sure things are in order and structured, right? Does that sound familiar? That's what we talked about Wednesday when we said there's a bit of a gender dynamic that comes with how men and women operate when it comes to the music industry. She's probably extremely good at like timekeeping and contacting people and making sure to follow up, and she has a pleasant voice. She's probably really, really nice to talk to. She's probably thoughtful with her communication and things like that. So she's the person that you would hire to do this job. It also proves that for her to have done it so consistently at a place this high level means that she has a certain standard for herself, independent of the job. That means that it's just within her to be this type of person. So then again, thinking about the kind of people you want to add within your network, you got to notice these kinds of things. Further than like them just being like Method Man saying being a part of the Klan since '86. There's a certain thing that you're developing, right? It's kind of in tandem with both. You want to meet people that you can kind of grow with and improve with, but at the same time, you have to be on the exact same page.
I've been here since 1990. I came from another studio, Sound City, which was really rock and roll. So it was nice to come over and hear horns and strings and everything. Capitol was started in the 40s. It was Glenn Wallachs who had Music City on Sunset.
So take a look at this photo for a second. Notice there's no color, right? We gotta take that in, right? We're used to 4K. There's no color, and they're basically constructing this what looks like smack dab in the middle of the city. So if you were an artist at this time, this probably wasn't even anything in your, you know, view. You just thought of it as just like, oh, some studio's coming someday, right? The things you were worried about were probably, you know, bills, health, trying to maintain your instrument, because there were no like digital audio workstations back then. If your instrument broke, that was bigger than anything, right? Which is why most people played guitar and sang, because they were low maintenance, right? But if you were, like she said, playing strings or playing brass, there was really not a mass studio on a mainstream level that was going to be doing something like this, at least within this area.
Vine, where people could actually go in and do little recording in there. It was a great record store back then. And Johnny Mercer, who wrote Accent the Positive and wrote a lot of the early hit songs for Capitol, and Buddy DeSilva, who was an attorney or accountant, whatever. But they all three got together and started the label. And then with the success in the 50s of Nat King Cole, that's when they decided to buy the property and build the tower and house the studios on the first floor.
So also think about this too. It was built in the 40s. And I think a lot of the laws we have as far as royalty rates and stuff like that was made soon after. Could you imagine, like if we looked at Atlantic Studios in the first clip, could you imagine the learning curve it took for a musician to go from just an artist to an executive, as far as just the knowledge, just to understand what's going to happen with your music, what's going to, you know, be needed and expected of you as a musician and things like that.
The success of Nat King Cole's Capitol recordings led to the nickname the house that Nat built. In actual fact, it was designed by famed architects Welton Beckett.
They were able to build the record company and bring over built recording studios. They did have this recording studios, which was the old Motown building on Melrose. But they needed more room for their artists, so they built these studios here. And this studio that we're in right now is Studio A. This room's really popular for big band, horns, strings, and...
So look at the size of this room. Remember we were talking about amphitheaters and how riggers have to set it up and how there's formulas and sciences to help to move sound around the room and to transform sound and stuff like that, right? This is a huge part of the success of this studio, right? Many of you are going to think like, oh, I just need a big enough space. But no, there's going to be like echoes and frequencies you have to think about, right? And so, again, you as a musician, yeah, you're worried about playing the notes and the keys and how people look and stuff like that. But this is the laboratory you're going to need for your success.
The composers love it.
A tends to get used more for, orchestral.
So, looking at this gentleman, Steve Genowick, how many of you would have walked past him in the grocery store and just been like, oh, it's just some American man or just a man in general who's just living his life, just chilling, just looking comfortable, right? Who would have thought he was a staff recording engineer at Capitol Records? Well, there's no real uniform. It's not like you're going to see it on his face. But the point here is like, how would you find that out? Like if you needed somebody like a Steve Genowick and he brought immense value and you knew how to help him and you guys would have made a great, business relationship, how would you make this work, right? And then let's say you get access to a Steve Genowick. You get to shake his hand and say, all right, let's do some business. Well, how do you use a Steve Genowick? What do you have him do? Like, how smart are you to utilize a tool this sharp?
Stuff. We do a lot of big band records here. Obviously, it's the home of Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and all those guys. So we do tons of big band records. It's really fun. That's my favorite thing to do is a big band. You get the guys out there. I say it's instant gratification. They go out, they play it down. Everybody comes in and listens to it, and then we go, great, and we move on to the next song. It's kind of that quick. So that tradition has been kept alive here. A lot of that is because of Al Schmidt, who has been, a diehard here for many, many, many years.
So musicians as well, I want you to pay attention to what he said. As an engineer, he said it's kind of like instant gratification. They come in, they play the song, run it down, and then we listen to it, and then we can move on. There's two things we can look at here, one that's a little deeper than the other. The first thing here is that clearly the musicians that are coming into Capitol Studios have a standard for themselves as far as how they're going to record. There's a big joke about like Jay-Z not writing his rhymes, and I don't know why this is so like a controversial thing. Basically, it just means that he practices his rhymes. It's literally it. And so he was basically saying that players would come in for the big band sessions, and because they practiced or probably had the sheet music and things like that, there wasn't much tweaking that needed to be done for the recording. So by the time they finished recording, all they had to do was listen to it, make sure things were right. Probably, if any tweaking might have been like technical more than musical. And so they would do that and then be able to move on. The second part of this that is actually a little deeper than that is that what that now proves is that what we say record labels look for a lot of time is your ability to produce, your ability to repeatably produce. And so now you have a situation where you can make a lot of music. You can record a lot of music quickly. You can do more gigs. It's kind of like DoorDash. Like if you do more DoorDash orders and things like that, they give you more orders. Well, here's the same premise in that if you're really good at, let's say, reading music or playing your instrument, ideally reading music, because that's what you'll be doing most of the time as a studio musician, then you can quickly pump out music. And then on top of that, you have to be healthy, you got to play well and things like that and maintain your instrument. So there's a lot that goes into what he explained that can be glossed over, especially for younger musicians. But that's the deep dive into what he was saying.
So Al and I do a lot of those type of records here. This room, it gets used for a good amount of tracking. It's not unusual for a rock type band to be in here, but it is more of orchestral and big bandy type stuff. Yeah. But in here, obviously it's a big recording space. Mostly what we do in here is recording, not a lot of mixing. So a lot of the stuff we have is very recording centric. We have some outboard mic preamps and compressors and stuff. Stuff like the old Fairchilds, the old Pool Tech, stuff like that. That stuff was purchased new from the studios in the 50s and 60s. We still have it. We have storerooms full of analog gear and all that kind of stuff. So very rarely do we get rid of stuff.
Why do you think they rarely get rid of stuff as a studio? When we talk about equity and ownership and things like that, as a studio, they rarely get rid of stuff. So when we think about our catalogs and, you know, assets and things like that, why do you think they rarely get rid of stuff?
And to just, if it has to come out of a room, it goes into what we call a fuzzy rack, which is just a, you know, and we can bring it in and out. So yeah, we do use our analog equipment quite a bit, especially on the recording side. Because we are one of the classic studios that you could say, like, you know, it's us and Abbey Road and United, those kind of places. We still have all that technology. If somebody wants to pull up an old 8-track machine and do something like that, we're more than happy to do that. We still have it. We have rooms full of analog machines and all that stuff. But we like to be on the cutting edge of the new stuff too. So, and I think we're pretty good at blending the two. You know, for instance, we do have all this great analog gear, and if we need it, it's right at our fingertips.
We still carry all the old equipment, all the vintage equipment, so because Universal and Capitol have a lot of catalog, and that's being used so much. So it's good that we can do the transfers on all that stuff and archiving of all those vintage tapes.
Studio B is another large live area and control room, now known as Capitol's Rock Room.
Studio B was also good for bands, and you can...
Studio B is massive. Holy smokes, look at this. So now when I'm thinking about this, I wouldn't even know how to design a room like this. So I might have to start learning architecture and stuff like that for myself, because this is pretty interesting to look at. Now, stuff that I look at now as I'm getting older is like the lights and the electrical and stuff like that. I knew a saxophone player that used to do wiring for buildings and stuff like that. So they used to climb through the ceilings and stuff like that and do the cables and connect the light switches and stuff like that. So they understood all of that stuff for them. So now if they wanted to design a studio, they would have that knowledge that they could use with the contractors or whoever they're using to build the studio to design a really, you know, good studio. This is pretty interesting.
Fit about 25 people in there, but later in the 60s, it was more like Bob Seger and Steve Miller. So it started getting more popular with Hart and Bonnie Raitt, and, you know, through the 70s and 80s. Since I've been there in the 90s, we've done a lot of work with John Mayer. Bob Dylan did his recent records with Al Schmidt. We've had the Goo Goo Dolls. Just a lot of rock bands in there. So it's a good combination between A, you know, being more strings and orchestra, and B, being more rock and roll.
Back in the days of budgets, you know, Green Day was in there doing American Idiot for months on end. John Mayer was in there doing a couple records for the better part of 2 years. So yeah, it's if we're doing big rock albums and stuff like that, they tend to gravitate towards Studio B. It's a comfy room. It's the control room's a little smaller. There's a nice lounge upstairs. The room sounds fantastic. I mean, it's a great string room. Horns sound fantastic in there. The control room's a little smaller.
I wanna also show you some of the little things in here. Like, clearly the mixing board is very expensive, right? The speakers are expensive. The monitors and things like that are expensive. The chairs.
There's a nice lounge
look
upstairs.
Like they're consistent. And
the room sounds
the other
fantastic.
thing that you see behind them is like office supplies. Like, a lot of times when we're thinking about like the little things that we need, sometimes you need notebooks for lyrics. Maybe you need, like, they got tissues, hand sanitizers, they got phones for, you know, maybe you need to make a quick call, order some food, maybe get an Uber, whatever it is you got to do, right? They're thoughtful about every little bit of this. But the point is that it all costs money. I'm looking at the doors. They have certain locks and latches on the doors. The light switches have metal covers and finishes on them. So there's a lot of things that you have to think about if you want to design a studio of Capitol Studios standards, right? Now, I'm only saying this is because a lot of you are thinking like, yeah, one day I'm gonna make it in the music industry and I'm gonna take over the game. But really, you're playing the same game with chess pieces as big as Capitol Studios here, right? And so it's just to level set you about like how far you have to think and understand and delegate, and how much authority you need to actually be considered a Capitol Studios. 1940s, y'all. It's 2026.
I mean, it's a great string room. Horns sound fantastic in there. It's a really versatile room. It's got a Neve 8068 in there. It's actually two 8068s put together. I've been told that it's actually serial number 1, 8068. Either way, it was put in there in the 70s. There are no plans for that console to come out of there. It's a fantastic console. It's one of my favorite ones. anywhere in the world. Like Studio A, it's got a complement of analog gear. So Studio B hasn't been touched all that much, and there really are no plans to touch it. The monitor, the mains were changed. We put the PMC monitors in. We've done some cosmetic stuff in there. Studio B pretty much stays Studio B. So the live rooms here, they're not exactly the way they were like in the 50s and 60s. In like 1989-90, which is a few years before I started working here, Studio A was completely remodeled, control room and live room. It used to be that the control room was a little booth in the corner and it was one big, huge room. Again, in that 89-90, it was torn apart and put in larger control room, put in the 2 ISO booths. And that's also when they made the cut in the wall and opened up the passage between Studio A and Studio B. The 2 rooms sit right next to each other. So that was something that was not, it was not in the original studio designs. Originally they were 2 separate studios. Now they are still 2 separate studios unless we don't want them to be, in which case we just slide the wall open. It's a really unique situation. It makes for a very large recording space. We can get about a 60-piece orchestra in here. Like a lot of times we'll put like big band and rhythm section, horns and rhythm section in Studio A, and we'll put the strings in Studio B. Well, if the horns are ripping really loud and we're not getting the presence we need on the strings, there's a glass wall that we can close. Even if the wall is open, as you'll see, you know, in the opening, it's not open all the way to the ceiling. So room mics can go above the opening, and that, you know, tends to keep some, not necessarily isolation, but it gives us a little more control. So it is a very unique, it's very unique to this studio, and I don't think anywhere else in the world can do that.
So a lot of the thought that they had going into that process probably took a lot of engineering, like not music, not singing, not twerking, engineering.
Keep some, not necessarily isolation, but it gives us a little more control. So it is a very unique, it's very unique to this studio, and I don't think anywhere else in the world can do that. And again, having that glass door in the middle, we can open it all the way, we can open it halfway, it really gives us so much control. We've done sessions where we had like the entire band in Studio A and a piano and a vocal in Studio B. So where Studio B just becomes the largest, most expensive ISO booth on the planet at that point. But it works. The isolation between the 2 rooms is actually pretty good. Believe it or not, the part of the wall that opens is more isolated than the other walls because there's air gaps in it. But on a day-to-day basis, you don't hear any bleed between the 2 rooms at all.
After 60 years, Capitol has an impressive collection.
Steinway & Sons is one of the greatest piano companies on the planet.
Of classic outboard, instruments, and microphones.
The instruments that we don't have a ton of instruments here. We have mostly pianos, keyboards, stuff like that. We have 2 pianos. One of them is a Steinway B. We call it the Nat King Cole piano. It's one of the pianos that was actually at the old original studio, and it came over here, so it's been here since the 50s.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy.
It's the Nat King Cole piano. It sounds great. We have a Yamaha C9 that, you know, probably as many people have played on. We have a Hammond B3 that's been here forever. You know, we had Billy Preston sign it at one point, and we have an old Wurlitzer and an old Rhodes, and I mean, they've been on countless records. We keep them in working order. It's not a museum as much as sometimes it is a museum, but it's a museum that works. So yeah, we have a lot of these old instruments. You know, we have a lot of old microphones. You know, we have the microphone Frank Sinatra sang into. I'm sure Frank Sinatra sang into a bunch of our microphones. At that time, they just grabbed the mic and put it up. But we still have that stuff. It still works. And, you know, we have old ribbon mics. You know, we have RCA 44s that I'm sure were bought new. I remember going through, you know, sorting through old boxes and storage and stuff and finding sales receipts for U47s. You know, that were $395 in 1961 or whenever it was that they bought them. And they've been here ever since. You know, I guarantee you there's microphones that walked into this building in the 60s and have never left. So yeah, we keep all our old stuff and we use it every day. And, you know, everybody says, oh, I want to see the Frank Sinatra mic. It's like, well, yeah, here's the Frank Sinatra mic, but it's also the Bob Dylan mic and the Paul McCartney mic and the Diana Krall mic, and insert sometimes it's the timpani mic, sometimes it's the bass mic, sometimes it's all the stuff that we have, all this great classic equipment. It gets used every day, and it gets used exactly the way it would get used at any other studio. I mean, it's the stuff is sacred to us because it's our tools, but we also if they want to stick pennies in the piano, it's fine. Put pennies in the piano. Just don't break it, but let's use it. So, some of our stuff has been beaten up a little bit. Some of it's not cosmetically the nicest stuff in the world, but it's really old and it gets used all the time, and it works and it sounds good. If it doesn't work and it doesn't sound good, it's not going to stick around. But yeah, having those old instruments, and sometimes that's inspiring to the artist too. To know that that's the piano that Nat King Cole played, or that's the microphone that Frank Sinatra sang into, or that's the Rhodes that was on the hit from whatever it was. When you feel that stuff when you come into a place like this.
I wanted him to explain that, and that was why I didn't pause it right there, was because there was a lot of value in what he was explaining as far as equity and sentimental value, right? That can bleed into the conversation we've had about catalogs and things like that for musicians. The idea of them running like we're going to sell all of our, stuff because so-and-so played on it sounds like a great idea. But all in all, they said they still use all of the tools that they have. But the thing is that they see the value in keeping it. So if they see the value in keeping it, and this is a record studio, then it begs the question why so many artists are willing to sell.
Even just the pictures in the hallway. Diana Krall used to say she would come down the hallway and ask for help. Sometimes just the place and the instrument that you're playing can be as much of an inspiration as the song you're singing, or where you are. So we use that to our advantage too. It's a good thing to have in your back pocket.
So yeah, this is a great video. If you guys want to check it out, make sure you guys go on Sound on YouTube and check it out. But all in all, this is a good way for you guys as musicians to really understand how to utilize your network, right? Because you guys are like, oh, I want to get in the studio, I want to get a producer and all that stuff like that. But who? And what do they work like? And what is your expectations of them? And how do you plan on getting the most out of them? And how do you plan on giving them the best version of yourself? Like I said, with Method Man, he was already performing Protect Your Neck with Wu-Tang, right? And when you think about Atlantic Studios, you have to be signed to get there, right? When you think about Capitol Records, like a lot of these people have consistent standards that go with what they're expecting from the music industry. And you have to be able to either bridge the gap between the value you bring them or the value they are trying to bring you in order for the relationship to make sense. And so in the music industry, yeah, you can be really cool with your homeboy, but can they really engineer music? Like, are they really a producer? And when you think about even a producer, are they really like state of the art? Are they trying to like learn, or is it just about just consistency and just being there and getting attendance? It's like going to the gym. You can go to the gym, but a lot of it is really about the intensity in the gym, right? How intense are you working out, right? And so that's all we have for you today here at Musician Talks. We're about to wrap it up. And like I said, this is the week of networking, reading the room, understanding cultural differences, navigating gender dynamics and all whatnot and such, right? So if you guys enjoyed this conversation, I will see you guys Monday, 9 a.m. so we can get this started again. And I will bring you guys the new topics and things like that. So I will see you guys next week. I'm out. Peace.